Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. This is a steel industry podcast featuring the big names of the business and the advice and stories that they've accrued over their years as insiders. Steel has been a vital component in American life for over 100 years, and the men and women who've helped it flourish are a diverse group of innovators full of interesting tales. We hope to share some of those tales here with you today. Thanks again to EOXS for providing this platform. In addition to this show, they are bringing businesses online by providing a standardized digital workspace for all your steel-related needs. Today, we welcome the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at International Steel and Counterweights, Mr. Patrick Chesterson. Patrick, thank you so much for giving us your time here today. How are you?
Kevin, I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for giving us an opportunity to chat with you and talk about the industry that's provided so many great jobs, great opportunities for people around the world.
Well, then I'm excited to talk about the industry as well. And a great place to start would be that it's an exciting time for a lot of businesses, not always in a great way. But what excites you about steel in 2020 going into 2021?
Well, I'll tell you, that's at a cocktail party, you can't find a story that's that exciting. But, to the industry professionals, I think what I get most excited about is the innovation along the lines of what products are available. How mills and manufacturers are finding a way to do more with less, lighter, stronger, faster. It's pretty exciting to see what can be done in the steel world today.
Are you seeing any innovations like on your end of things that really excite you personally as opposed to like the macro view?
From an excitement standpoint for us, as an industry observer, what's exciting is to see how light we can make a product made out of steel. Also looking at the advanced manufacturing pieces and the particulate manufacturing, that's exciting. From a professional standpoint at my business, we're on the furthest end from innovation that you can be. But it still offers a really interesting opportunity to continue to help the industry grow.
Well, you brought up your company. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about International Steel and Counterweights and how they're adding value to the industry in your eyes?
Sure. International Steel and Counterweights were a company that started about 10 years ago, focused on manufacturing exclusively counterweights, ballast, and weldments for non-critical and non-structural opportunity. So what does that mean? Those are the products on cranes, on material handling equipment in the elevator industry that require counterbalance or counterforce to do the intended working product of the OEM. It is a non-critical part, but absolutely necessary. And the niche that we provide in the market is finding the steel that can't make its intended use. The chemistry was wrong, the mechanical properties were wrong, yet it still retains the basic semblance of steel, and it can be used for some real unique niche products to a manufacturer.
Do you have off the top of your head any of these niche products that you've come across? Because that sounds like a very cool diversion of resources.
It is. It's you're keeping now, as we all know, steel is the most recyclable product in the world. Our company is able to take that product that was made by mistake and turns it into an application rather than a remelt or a recycle. So we'll take a crane, for instance. If it lifts 1 million pounds, it'll typically have 1 million pounds or some amount of counterweight on the back end. If it's an elevator that can carry 10,000 pounds, at the end of the rope is 10,000 pounds of counterweight. All the customers typically care about is that density is what it needs to be. And as long as we can fabricate it into a non-critical, a non-structural piece, good to use it.
All right, well, that's more background on your company. I would love to know more about how you yourself found your way into the industry and eventually to International Steel and Counterweights.
Interesting. I started with a degree in political science and economics out of college from Ohio State. Ended up always wanting to be in the sales and marketing side. started in the intangible world of financial sales, and realized quickly that personally I wasn't excited by a product you couldn't touch, feel, or make, which led me into industrial products, which 20 years ago took me into the steel business, starting with crucible steel, which was a tool steel, where you'd make your molds, your tool sets, and mold bases from, which led me to this world of counterweights almost 16 years ago. And 10 years ago, we, management team and I, started this business with AMG Resources. And here we are, today, 10 years almost to the day.
Now, are you from Ohio originally?
I grew up upstate New York, Rochester, New York area. Went to school in Ohio. Yeah. And
I went to school in St. Bonaventure. It's right by there.
The Bonnies. How do you go wrong with the Bonnies? The Goliaths or the Davids of the world, of the basketball world.
We are always climbing up that mountain, and we're never going to stop.
Well, so hopefully you're a bandwagon Bills fan like the rest of us from the upstate New York world.
I like being underdog, not that much. I'm a Patriots fan.
Well, hey, no comparison.
Right,
but upstate New York, went to Rochester, Ohio, and now I live outside Detroit.
Okay. Now you are a big part of your job is marketing. We've seen a lot of innovations on the social media side of things for basically every industry that requires some form of marketing, which I can't think of one that doesn't. How has sales via social media affected your company and if you can postulate the steel industry at large?
Sure. I will tell you that's our biggest challenge at this point, and where innovation we're anxious to see is the turnover of the audience. Right now the audience in the industrial and manufacturing piece, especially on the B2B side, we've not found to be moved much by social media. What's also interesting is the demographic of the people involved in manufacturing, and that's probably a whole different podcast, but that next generation of employee and leader and thought leader of what they're doing to purchase and find out their leads. So that social media piece, we've not found to be an impactful piece of our marketing. But it's certainly got to take hold sooner rather than later, because that's the direction of all marketing.
Now, that's very interesting. I feel like that's as a market, someone with a master's degree in marketing myself, it's rare that you see people not immediately attributing some massive success to marketing via social media. Have you found that your online presence as a whole, like the company's online presence, have helped the brand in other ways?
Again, I think probably being so unique and niche-y that we are, we've not seen a tremendous amount of success from that online piece, from that social media piece. And that we attribute simply because of how niche-y we are and how unique we are. For example, if you're a large original equipment manufacturer with a bill of materials that has 10,000 widgets out there, we may be appropriate, my company, for 2 or 3 of those widgets. And in order to get permission to use those 2 or 3, again, because my material isn't prime or as intended, there's a fair selling cycle to it. So we find that broadcast piece of social media, unless it's micro-targeted, is really creating too big a net and taking us too wide, that the social piece and the online piece is not impactful. So it really allows or requires us to be a little bit old school in how we go to market.
All right, well, tell us a little bit more about that old school approach. Like how does marketing for your brand, your company, how does it show itself in today's industry?
Oh, sure. It really, it's a lot of that old Willy Loman style of marketing. And, by that, I mean, it's about identifying the possible users and engaging them personally, more so on a lunch and learn, on a product education piece, and helping them get through the barriers in their organization to using a lower cost, maybe lower quality product on the raw material piece to accomplish their non-critical, non-structural goals. And so, for instance, we would reach out to a large OEM engineering team and find out who their folks are designing those parts. And it's really about helping them get that piece across to their organization so that they can make use of these products. And that social media piece, the online piece, really becomes, again, that net get cast too big for our company to be able to service it.
Do you find much room or need for innovation on the marketing side of things, given your more old school approach, or is
Sure.
it more of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that we're fighting right now. But the challenge is that how to get that message to the new buyer or the new decision maker into manufacturing organizations. We joke that the pathway to the decision-making process today is much different than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the person in a buying situation today typically started on the floor of their manufacturing company, manufacturing whatever widget they had, working their way up into a procurement slot. Today, many of the procurement people are supply chain engineers or supply chain trained by university. And they don't necessarily have that depth or grasp of the actual assembly or manufacturing piece of their widget. And so that messaging is much different, and it's a bigger challenge. We typically, instead of originating our sales process at the procurement side, we end up now having to originate that at the engineering, research and development, and floor level, and hopefully push that demand in through their organization.
So do you think something is lost when a company transitions away from that corporate ladder, like work your way up from the ground floor mentality and going to people that are just graduating with a degree?
I think whenever you lose the experience of manufacturing and making the widget you're trying to either engineer, lead, sell, or procure for, there's something that can be lost in translation. Certainly the innovation that the supply chain and the professional purchasing team brings to the equation is their ability to understand cost, which historically maybe somebody that started on that manufacturing floor did not. I don't know that I would say that anything is lost, but I would say it's a different skill set that's being brought to bear.
And different problems that arise as a result, but it's not more or less.
Yeah, for instance, a great example of a product that we do business with would be simply a piece of weight that goes into the backside of a piece of material handling equipment. Just big weight. Typically, if you're used to the manufacturing piece of that, it's just a hunk that has to go in the back, sit under the seat, sit in the back of the unit, and all it does is provide that balance to allow your unit. If you worked your way up from the floor, you understand how wide open that spec can be. If you worked your way up from the modeling side and the spreadsheet side, what you know is that part ABC goes in that, and the specification per the print is this. You don't have that experience to draw from to know that you can deviate from that print if it in turn means a 15 to a 25% savings over what that print specifies. That's the value proposition we bring, is typically that big savings. What we need is to find that person in an organization that gets excited by it and is able to do something about it. And without the manufacturing piece, it's tough.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the first times I've ever seen a problem like that articulated in such a way. And I think that's very interesting because you don't see a lot of people talking about the loss of that experience and how important that experience can be. Yeah, just very insightful. Thank you.
I think you'll see, especially as we talk in manufacturing in general, with this generation. We call it internally a lost generation of people, first, second jobs, of the interest in working in their hands. And it's not a unique problem to my company. It's a unique problem to manufacturing and steel. Of this generation, do they want to value the trades and recognize what phenomenal pathways to middle class and professionalism it is? And it translates into that recent grad. Do they want to go to work for fancy high tech or cool podcasting opportunities, or do they want to dive into being a buyer at a mid-sized manufacturer and procuring widgets? And we've got to do something to get people excited about that as well.
Well, I personally considered not going the podcast route, but then I wouldn't be sitting here having such a lovely conversation with you. So I'm very grateful I made the decisions I have.
As am I. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Moving on, you've seen a wide variety of clients. Do any stand out as more innovative than others, or do you notice trends among companies that are more innovative?
You know what I do? I recognize there's two distinct pathways to innovation in manufacturing. And I think they're both great, and they both have different paradigm shifts, really. If you look at the larger Fortune 500 manufacturing company, you pick the name out of the, that top Dow Jones Industrial. What those folks do so well is organize a thoughtful, strategic path to innovation. It takes them a lot longer to bring it to bear. The small and mid-sized manufacturers, they don't have the resources, but they are quick to respond, I find, to a market challenge and an ability to innovate. Typically more on a tactical level than they are strategic. I don't know if I answered your question there.
Oh, no. Well, the trends, very well, that is the trends that you've noticed. Do you have any specific examples from your experience?
Certainly in the crane and construction industry. Again, I can certainly only talk to our side of the world on counterweight. What we've noticed certainly is the ability of these major customers to target and specify and customize what historically had been a very static product line. And I think that innovation piece, that flexibility of manufacturing, is making a big difference in that industry. From an innovation of, and how do they use the steel piece, manufacturing today allows them much greater control and individualized control than it ever has.
With it, stemming from that, every industry, no matter how set in stone, or steel in this case, has seen a lot of need to innovate and change, especially with the current state of affairs. Depending on when you're listening to this podcast, we are currently in the middle of a quarantine. Do you think there is a necessary next step for your business in particular, if not the industry at large?
Innovation-wise?
Innovation-wise, approach-wise,
Sure.
A next step in evolution.
The next step, I think, in everybody's evolution is faster path to market. How do you find a way to the customer quicker, sooner, and on target to what they're really looking for? Whether it be a manufacturer or a fabricator like us, all the way up to the steel mills. How do they take that product and get there quicker and take time out of the market? In this worldwide supply chain that we're all existing in North America, I think we're always going to be challenged with cost. And so the only way we're going to be able to compete with that innovatively is by getting directly and responding directly to the customer, shortening our supply chain, and making us so maneuverable that we don't need to go outside North American borders for raw material or products.
I think that's interesting, just because that shortening the distance to the consumer is the chief aim of so many businesses, but other industries are more able to use things like social media for big data and that. Sure. the search engine optimization. So I think that you seeding that eventually there is going to be a way for social media to fit into your business's strategy, but not yet. I think that's very interesting.
As I mentioned, we're right now in the midst of redoing our website and optimizing everything through direct mail, actually going old school direct mail, postcard marketing.
Do not diss mailing lists. They are
No,
very
sir.
effective too. No, I'm not to you, the listeners,
Yeah.
potentially. That is a very effective marketing tool.
In our case, where we are so narrowly defined in what we can take to market, and our customer list is finite, it's not infinite, it makes sense to spend the money on that direct mail piece. And it makes sense for us to spend a high dollar click on a very, very targeted keyword to get everything we can, as well as into the LinkedIn piece and to the social dive of trying to find that very specific engineer at that very specific customer to take our message to them. And so it's a little different.
For sure. Again, based on your experience, there are many parts of the industry that have kind of stalled in a lot of ways. Which part do you think is more inclined or in need of innovation? Service centers with their processes, or mills with innovation in manufacturing? Which side of the coin do you think?
Oh boy, that's tricky because innovation is needed, across the board on both sides. I think to survive, the service center piece has to be able to be more responsive, faster. From a mill standpoint, the innovation of production and manufacturing is what needs to be faster and more innovative. I think we're starting to see that with the significant investments that are being made in North America steel ownership and steel mill ownership. I think that is going to start taking place. You look at Nucor and see what they do, and they really do a fantastic job of leading continuously, leading the industry with innovation.
Now, you've called yourself a change maker. What is the great of the people that give themselves nicknames? I feel like that is definitely a solid one, right up there with Black Mamba. What is the change that you did for the steel industry that you're really proud of?
Boy, I'll tell you, I wish it was exciting, and I wish it was boulder moving.
Well, don't knock it. We haven't heard it yet.
Yeah. But what we do on a daily basis in our business is we help manufacturers change their thinking about how they have to approach solving a problem around weight, ballast, and counterweight. And again, I usually get eyes rolling in the back of their head at a cocktail party when I talk about that, because I don't know that it could be much more boring.
Well, you're going to the wrong cocktail party, sir.
You know it. But from a change standpoint, being able to help an organization look at how they make a widget and show them a place that is non-critical, that they can save money, we're changing their ability, that customer's ability, to take their product to market at a lower cost. And that, to me, is an exciting change piece. It's changing the way they think about manufacturing. It's changing the way they think about how their products have to be produced.
Are there any common suggestions or mistakes that you notice among companies that are easy ways to save money with regards to widgets and counterweight?
Oh, sure. The easiest change that people miss is the ability to think outside of the specification and think about what their product's function actually is. So many of us, and we do this in every parts of our life, if it says we need a Canuter valve, well, we don't necessarily wonder what the Canuter valve does. We just know it says we need a Canuter valve. So let's look at what that product is actually intended to do, and how can we look at producing it or procuring it at a different, lower cost way. And so I would say, whether you call that innovative, or whether you call that open-minded, whether you call that curious about how they're fabricating a part. That's the piece that we sometimes all lose. And I see across the board with many of my customers, they just don't have the time to do that and look at that piece of value engineering.
I think that speaks to the idea that there's always, with many problems, almost all problems, there are multiple routes to success, and it's all about what routes you're utilizing. And it sounds like your proudest innovation is helping companies see the most effective way given their circumstance, working within their circumstances. Does that sound right?
Well, I'll tell you, if this podcasting thing doesn't work out, I'm ready to hire a marketing guy. So you summarized our tact perfect. And that's exactly it, is, how can I come in? How can our company come in and bring value to you by showing you these manufacturing steps that'll pull cost out for something that's typically not value added in your own offering to the marketplace. You just are looking to buy heavy. I mean, that's it. Let me put it on your piece of equipment in a non-structural, non-critical way, as a weldment, as a fabrication that meets your minimum standard, but still delivers 100% of its expected performance. And, again, to me, that's exciting.
It is very exciting, just because I as a martial artist, getting a little personal here, I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and there's often this feeling that you get when you find a more effective way past a problem, past a position, past an attack that you can't get out of. And when it clicks and it becomes a mental pathway that you're able to rely on, it leads to innovations way down the road. Like it's breaking down dams. And I think that the act of building those solutions is very interesting. So, we're running low on time here, but I think a great way to close would be, when you're looking at a problem, what kind of process do you go through to find what kind of alternatives or more cost-effective solutions there could be for a company?
Collaboration is always the best answer on that. I'm 49, and I've been doing this now in manufacturing for, almost 28 years. I have a pretty ingrained pathway of how I think. And, that's not so bad, because it works sometimes. But by diving in people in all facets of our organization, and some outsiders too, my wife is a hell of a sounding board, usually to tell me where I'm wrong, but oftentimes to hear a problem from a different point of view, the fires of ideas and grains of idea that come out of those conversations are invaluable. So we'll bring in our welders, we'll bring in our painter, we'll bring in our crane operator, as we'll walk through one of our customers' dilemmas, in addition to our customers' teams, of how do we solve this problem? How do we take cost out? How do we use these products to create value? And then kick it through and find that solution.
All right. Well, sir, thank you so much for your time. I believe we're running out the clock on the Zoom meeting, but I just wanted to say thank you very much for your insights. This has been an incredible conversation for our listeners and me as well. And we hope to have you back again soon.
Sure, Kevin. However I can help. Congrats
definitely.
And good luck on the podcast.
All right. Well, I will be ending things, so don't go away yet. But to our listeners, this has been the first of many insightful episodes of EOXS's Steel Stories. Thanks again to Mr. Chesterson for stopping by. And remember, whether galvanized or hot rolled, EOXS will provide a marketplace to take any steel business to the online sector. Thank you and good night.